us coming through the storm, flashing of a gun. Hear the thunder in the sky, the fire in the rain. Grip the rifle, hold the line, wash away the pain. Lightning strikes the ground between us, you and me until the end. You and me until the end.
The first time Samuel Boone saw the woman who would one day become his wife, she was aiming a revolver directly at his chest. The sun had not yet risen. A cold grey light hung over the Colorado Territory, turning the prairie silver and blue. Frost covered the grass around Samuel's barn, and every breath left a cloud in the air. He had awakened before dawn, as he always did. The cattle needed feeding, the horses needed water, and winter was approaching faster than anyone liked to admit. Samuel pulled on his coat and stepped outside. The world was silent, too silent. For a moment he simply stood there, listening. A ranch teaches a man to hear things other people miss: a loose gate, a nervous horse, a coyote moving through brush. Something felt wrong. His eyes moved toward the barn. The door stood partially open. He frowned. He distinctly remembered securing it the night before. Slowly he crossed the yard. His boots crunched against frozen ground. One hand rested near the revolver at his hip. He wasn't afraid, just cautious. Caution kept a man alive. When he reached the barn, he pushed the door open. The hinges groaned. Inside, darkness lingered between the stalls. The horses shifted uneasily. Then he saw movement. Someone sat in the far corner, a figure wrapped in a worn blanket. The revolver appeared almost instantly. The barrel pointed straight at him. Samuel stopped moving. The woman holding the weapon looked exhausted. Dark hair framed a pale face. Her cheeks were hollow. Her eyes carried the look of someone who had not slept properly in a very long time. But the revolver never wavered. "Don't come closer," she said. Her voice was rough. Samuel raised both hands. "I wasn't planning to." The woman studied him carefully, as if searching for a lie, as if expecting one. He noticed something else. Blood. A dark stain spread beneath the blanket wrapped around her shoulder. Fresh blood. Too much of it. "You're hurt." "I said don't come closer." "You did." He remained exactly where he was. The horses shifted again. A gust of cold air entered through the open barn door. The woman trembled slightly, not from fear, from exhaustion. Samuel recognized the signs. He had seen wounded cattle push themselves too far, seen cowboys refuse treatment until they collapsed. Whatever had happened to her, she had been running hard, and for a long time. "What's your name?" he asked. The woman remained silent. Fair enough. Names required trust. Trust wasn't something she seemed interested in giving. "My name's Samuel Boone." Still silence. Then finally, "Elena." It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. Samuel nodded. "Well, Elena, you're bleeding all over my barn." For the first time, something almost resembling amusement flickered across her face. Almost. Then it disappeared. "Sorry, it'll wash out." A long pause followed. The woman looked weaker by the second. Samuel noticed her grip tightening on the revolver, not because she wanted to shoot, because she was struggling to stay conscious. "How bad is it?" No answer. He tried again. "Shoulder?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Gunshot." The realization came immediately. The wound sat too high to be anything else. Someone had shot her, and she had somehow survived. Who did it? Elena's expression hardened. The answer clearly wasn't coming. Samuel accepted that. People talked when they were ready, not before. "You got a doctor nearby?" she asked. He almost laughed. The nearest doctor lived 20 miles away, and half the territory claimed the man drank more whiskey than medicine. Not one worth mentioning. Something like disappointment crossed her face. Then her eyes fluttered, only for a second. But Samuel saw it. She was close to collapsing. Dangerously close. "You're running a fever." "I'm fine." "No, you're not." The words came out more sharply than intended. Elena glared at him. Samuel met her gaze. Neither looked away. For several seconds the barn remained completely still. Then suddenly Elena swayed. The revolver lowered slightly. Her free hand pressed against the wooden wall beside her. Samuel took one step forward. The revolver lifted again, but slower this time. Much slower. "Elena?" Her eyes struggled to focus. "If you wanted to hurt me," Samuel said quietly, "you would have done it already." She stared at him. The revolver trembled, then finally lowered. A few moments later she collapsed. Samuel caught her before she hit the ground. When Elena woke, she immediately reached for a weapon. She found none. Instead, she found clean sheets, a warm room, and the smell of coffee. Her eyes snapped open. She sat upright. Pain exploded through her shoulder. The room spun. A voice came from nearby. Easy. Samuel sat in a chair beside the bed. A book rested in his lap. He looked exhausted, as though he hadn't slept, which she realized he probably hadn't. You treated the wound. It wasn't a question, Samuel nodded. Had to. She pulled back the blanket slightly. Fresh bandages covered her shoulder. Clean, professional enough, not perfect, but surprisingly good. You've done this before. Cattle, she blinked. Cattle and one stubborn brother. Despite herself, Elena almost smiled. Almost. Samuel closed the book. You want food? No. Her stomach growled loudly. Samuel raised an eyebrow. The first genuine smile touched his face. It transformed him, made him look younger, less guarded. I'll take that as a yes. For the next several days, Elena remained at the ranch, not because she trusted Samuel. Not yet. Because she physically couldn't leave. The wound was worse than she'd admitted. The fever came and went. Some nights she barely slept. Old memories returned whenever she closed her eyes. Men chasing her through darkness, gunfire, chains, fear. The memories never stayed buried. Samuel never asked questions. That surprised her more than anything. Most people wanted explanations. They wanted stories. They wanted reasons. Samuel simply brought food, changed bandages, kept the fireplace burning, and gave her space. The restraint felt strange, comforting, dangerous, because comfort led to trust, and trust led to disappointment. She knew that better than most. One evening she found him repairing a saddle near the barn. The setting sun painted the prairie gold. Samuel worked quietly, focused, patient. Elena watched for several moments, then spoke. You really don't want to know? He glanced up. Know what? Why someone shot me? Samuel considered, then shrugged. When you're ready to tell me, you will. That answer bothered her, because it wasn't the answer she expected. She had prepared herself for curiosity, prepared herself for suspicion, prepared herself for judgment, not patience. Patience was harder. Patience required honesty in return, and honesty frightened her, far more than questions ever could. That night, neither of them knew that danger was already riding toward the ranch. Two men crossed the prairie beneath the moonlight, both armed, both experienced trackers, and both working for the same man. Victor Crowe, the man Elena had escaped, the man who had spent months hunting her, the man who believed people could be owned. One tracker studied the distant lights of Samuel Boone's ranch, then smiled. I think we found her. The other nodded. Boss is going to be pleased. Far away, inside the warm ranch house, Elena sat beside the fireplace. For the first time in months, she felt safe. She had no idea safety was about to be tested, and neither did Samuel Boone. But before winter ended, both of their lives would change forever. End of part 1. If you enjoyed this chapter of US Wild Love Story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter of this unforgettable frontier romance. Coming in part 2, Elena reveals part of her past, Samuel discovers who Victor Crowe really is, and armed riders arrive at the ranch looking for the woman Samuel has sworn to protect. Found the Cherokee healer and discovered a love worth fighting for. The first rider arrived 3 days later. Samuel saw him from the pasture shortly after sunrise. A lone horseman approached from the east. The man wasn't in a hurry. That alone made Samuel suspicious. Most travelers either rode with purpose or rode exhausted. This man rode like someone looking for something, or someone. Samuel leaned against the fence and watched. The rider eventually stopped near the front gate. He didn't dismount, didn't greet, didn't smile. His eyes swept across the ranch, the barn, the corrals, the house, the windows, calculating, measuring, counting. Samuel had seen that look before. It was the look of a predator, not a hunter, not a rancher, a predator. Morning, Samuel called. The rider nodded. Morning. His voice sounded pleasant enough. His eyes did not. You Samuel Boone? I am. The rider studied him, then smiled. We're looking for a woman. Samuel's expression never changed. Lots of women in Colorado Territory. The smile widened slightly. Dark hair, Cherokee. There it was, the confirmation. Samuel kept his voice calm. Can't say I've seen anyone. The rider looked toward the house. For a moment neither man spoke. Then the stranger nodded. Well, if you do. His smile vanished. Tell her Victor Crowe is still searching. The words hung in the cold air. Then the rider turned his horse and left. Samuel watched until the man disappeared beyond a distant ridge. Only then did he move. He walked back toward the house, not quickly, not because he wasn't concerned, because panic never solved anything. Inside, Elena sat at the kitchen table. She already knew. He could see it immediately. The color had drained from her face. "How much did you hear?" "Enough." Samuel sat across from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Elena looked up, and for the first time since arriving, she volunteered the truth. Not all of it, but enough. "Victor Crowe isn't a rancher." Samuel nodded. "I guessed. He's worse." Her voice remained steady, yet something dark moved beneath it, something painful. "He buys people." The room fell silent. Samuel stared at her. She continued. "Women, children, anyone he thinks he can sell." A cold anger settled into Samuel's chest, not explosive, not loud, the kind of anger that became permanent, the dangerous kind. "He runs routes through Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona." She looked down at her hands. "I was supposed to disappear." Samuel remained silent. Elena continued. "I escaped 6 months ago. 6 months. 6 months of running. 6 months of looking over her shoulder. 6 months of never feeling safe." Samuel suddenly understood why she never sat with her back to a door, why she woke at every sound, why she memorized every exit, why she looked at windows before speaking. A person didn't learn habits like that unless survival depended on them. How many people work for him? Elena hesitated. Enough. That answer worried Samuel more than any number could have. That evening, Samuel rode north to his brother's ranch. Thomas Boone listened carefully. Unlike Samuel, Thomas was loud where Samuel was quiet, broad-shouldered, opinionated, and completely incapable of hiding what he felt. By the time Samuel finished explaining the situation, Thomas looked ready to start a war. "People like Crowe don't stop." "I know. They'll come back." "I know." Thomas stood. "Then we're preparing." Samuel nodded. That was exactly why he'd come. By the following afternoon, the ranch looked different. Extra rifles, extra ammunition, extra eyes watching the horizon. Thomas arrived with 2 trusted ranch hands. Neither asked questions. Neither needed convincing. Samuel simply explained that someone might come looking for trouble. That was enough. Meanwhile, Elena watched everything. Carefully, thoughtfully. She wasn't used to people helping her. That much was obvious. Several times Samuel caught her staring at the preparations with a puzzled expression, as though she couldn't quite understand why anyone would willingly involve themselves. Late that evening she found him repairing a fence post. The sun had almost disappeared. Long shadows stretched across the prairie. "You don't have to do this." Samuel kept working. "I know. You barely know me." "I know that too." Elena frowned. "Then why?" Samuel drove another nail into place, then finally looked at her. "Because someone should." The answer hit her harder than she expected. For several seconds she couldn't speak, because deep down she realized something. Nobody had chosen her side in a very long time. 2 days later the trouble arrived. Not 1 rider, not 2, 4. Samuel spotted them shortly before sunset. The men approached confidently, like they expected obedience. That alone told him everything. Crowe's people. Thomas saw them too. "Think they're just visiting?" "No." Thomas sighed. "Didn't think so." The riders stopped near the gate. The leader wore a black coat. A revolver rested openly on his hip. He smiled. Samuel immediately disliked him. "You, Samuel Boone?" "Depends who's asking." The smile widened. "Clever." The man glanced toward the house. "We're collecting property." Thomas visibly stiffened. Samuel's expression never changed, but internally something cold locked into place. Property. The same word. The same poison. "There's no property here." The leader chuckled. "Friend, you're standing on it." Behind him the other riders laughed. Nobody else did. The leader's smile slowly faded. "Hand over the girl." "No." Simple. Direct. Final. The man stared at Samuel, then at Thomas, then at the rifles visible near the corrals. His confidence shifted slightly. Not gone, but altered. "We're authorized." Samuel almost smiled. "By who?" "Victor Crowe." "That doesn't mean much to me." The rider's eyes hardened. "It should." Samuel took 1 step forward. "I don't care who he is." Silence. Tension filled the air. The horses sensed it. So did everyone else. The leader looked toward the ranch house, then back to Samuel. "You know what's interesting?" Samuel said nothing. "People always think they're heroes." The man laughed softly. "Until reality arrives." Then he pointed toward the distant mountains. "Crowe has more men than you." His finger moved toward Samuel. "More money." then toward the ranch, and more patience. The threat was clear. Samuel understood it perfectly. So did Thomas. The rider smiled one final time, like, "We'll be seeing each other again." Then they left. That night nobody slept much. Thomas sat cleaning rifles. The ranch hands checked horses. Samuel walked the perimeter twice. Elena watched from the porch. The stars above looked sharp enough to cut. Finally she approached him. "They aren't bluffing." "I know. Victor Crowe never stops." Samuel nodded. The prairie stretched endlessly before them, dark, silent, waiting. Elena folded her arms. "I don't want anyone hurt because of me." Samuel looked at her, really looked. The moonlight silvered her face. She looked strong, capable, yet tired in a way that went deeper than exhaustion. "You didn't create this." Her eyes met his. "Maybe not." "No, maybe." His voice remained calm, steady, certain. "The people causing this are responsible for it." For several seconds she simply stared at him, then slowly looked away because part of her wanted to believe him, and believing him felt dangerous. Hope always did. The attack came 3 nights later, just before dawn. The hour when most people sleep deepest, the hour predators preferred. A horse whinnied sharply. Samuel's eyes opened instantly. Years of ranch life had trained him well. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Then came the sound, a gunshot. The ranch exploded into motion. Thomas shouted from another room. Men grabbed rifles, boots hammered against wooden floors. Outside, shadows moved between buildings. Samuel burst through the front door. Chaos greeted him. Gunfire cracked across the darkness. Horses screamed. Someone cursed. Another shot echoed. Then Samuel saw them. 5 riders, maybe 6, moving fast, trying to reach the house, trying to reach Elena. A rifle fired beside him. Thomas. One attacker tumbled from his horse. The others scattered. Gunfire flashed across the yard. Then suddenly another rifle joined the fight. Sharp, precise, accurate. Samuel glanced toward the barn. Elena. She stood behind cover with a Winchester rifle. Calm, focused, every movement deliberate. The frightened woman who had arrived wounded weeks earlier was gone. This was someone else. Someone who had survived because she knew how to survive. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. It felt much longer. When the smoke finally cleared, the attackers were retreating, racing toward the eastern hills, gone for now. Silence returned slowly, broken only by nervous horses and heavy breathing. Thomas lowered his rifle. "Think they'll be back?" Samuel watched the horizon. The first light of dawn appeared, cold and pale. Yes, he already knew, because men like Victor Crowe rarely accepted failure, and because somewhere beyond those hills, Crowe himself had probably just learned exactly where Elena Graybird was hiding, which meant the real fight hadn't started yet. It was only beginning. End of part 2. If you enjoyed this chapter of US Wild Love Story, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next episode. Coming in part 3, Victor Crowe enters the story in person. Elena reveals the darkest part of her past. Samuel risks everything to protect her, and a growing bond between them begins to change both of their lives forever. Part 3. The rancher who found the Cherokee healer and discovered a love worth fighting for. The morning after the attack felt strangely normal. That was the unsettling part. The sun still rose over the Colorado prairie. The cattle still needed feeding. The horses still demanded attention. Wind still moved through the dry grass. The world had not changed, and yet everything had. Samuel stood beside the corral fence, watching the horizon. The attackers had retreated, but nobody believed they were finished. Men like Victor Crowe did not spend resources chasing someone for 6 months, only to quit because a rancher and a few friends stood in the way. No, Crowe would come himself. Samuel felt certain of it, and certainty rarely visited him without reason. Inside the house, Elena sat at the kitchen table. A cup of coffee cooled untouched in front of her. Sleep had been impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, old memories surfaced. Chains, locked wagons, desert roads, faces she wished she could forget. She heard footsteps. Samuel entered carrying firewood. He immediately noticed the untouched coffee. "You should drink that." "I'm not thirsty." "You say that every morning." She looked up. "You always notice?" "I notice most things." The answer should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded factual. Samuel placed the firewood beside the stove, then sat across from her. For a few moments, neither spoke. Eventually, Elena broke the silence. "Victor Crowe will come himself." Samuel nodded. I know. You don't sound worried. I am worried. That surprised her. You hide it well. Samuel looked toward the window. My father used to say fear is useful. Elena waited. He said panic is what gets people killed. A small smile touched her lips. Your father sounds wise. He was. The smile faded. I wish wisdom stopped bullets. Samuel couldn't argue with that. Later that afternoon, Thomas arrived with troubling news. He rode hard enough that sweat darkened his horse despite the cool weather. Samuel met him outside. The moment Thomas dismounted, Samuel knew. Something had happened. What is it? Thomas removed his hat. Victor Crowe is here. For a second the world seemed quieter. Even the wind felt distant. Where? Copper Ridge. Samuel's expression darkened. Copper Ridge sat less than 15 miles away. Too close, far too close. Thomas continued. 3 witnesses saw him. Certain? Certain. Samuel nodded slowly. The situation had changed, because rumors were one thing, a man was another. And Victor Crowe had arrived. That evening Elena sat alone near the barn. The sunset painted the prairie gold and crimson. Usually she found comfort in the wide-open landscape. Tonight it felt different, smaller somehow, as though danger had finally caught up. She heard footsteps approaching. Samuel, he sat beside her without speaking. For a while they simply watched the sky. Eventually Elena broke the silence. You should leave. Samuel glanced at her. What? You and Thomas? She kept staring toward the horizon. You should take the cattle and go north. Samuel looked at her for several seconds, then shook his head. No. The answer came immediately. Firm, certain. No. Elena frowned. You didn't even think about it. I did. When? The moment you said it. She almost laughed despite herself. That's not enough time. It was. The wind moved through the grass. Elena looked down at her hands. You don't understand. Then help me. The words caught her off guard. Most people interrupted, assumed, judged. Samuel listened. Actually listened. So she told him. Not everything, but enough for him to understand. 6 months earlier she had been traveling with a small trading group. Cherokee families, 2 wagons, children, supplies, hope. They had been heading west, looking for opportunity, looking for peace. They found Victor Crowe instead. The attack came before dawn, fast, violent, efficient. Crowe's men knew exactly what they were doing. Some escaped, most didn't. Elena remembered the gunfire, the screaming, the confusion. She remembered fighting, remembered trying to protect a little girl named Sarah, remembered failing. That memory hurt most, not because she hadn't tried, because she still heard Sarah's voice in her dreams, every night, without fail. By the time Elena finished speaking, darkness had fallen completely. Samuel remained silent, not because he didn't care, because some stories deserved silence. Eventually, Elena looked at him. Aren't you going to say something? Samuel thought for a moment, then answered honestly, I don't think there are words for that. For several seconds she stared at him, then slowly nodded, because he was right. There weren't. The following day brought an unexpected visitor, a woman named Martha Reed, owner of the general store in Copper Ridge, widowed, practical, completely unimpressed by foolishness. She arrived shortly after noon. Samuel greeted her warmly. Elena watched cautiously from the porch. Martha noticed immediately. That her? Samuel nodded. Martha climbed down from her wagon, then walked directly toward Elena. No hesitation, no fear, no awkwardness, just purpose. The older woman stopped in front of her. You're Elena? Yes. Martha extended her hand. I'm Martha Reed. Elena hesitated, then shook it. Martha nodded. Good. Elena blinked. Good? Now I can stop wondering. That answer made absolutely no sense. Apparently Martha noticed, because she smiled. Samuel talks about you. For the first time all day, Samuel looked uncomfortable. Thomas, standing nearby, immediately started laughing. Elena raised an eyebrow. Does he? Martha nodded. More than he realizes. Samuel looked toward the sky, as though hoping lightning would strike him and end the conversation. Unfortunately for him, it did not. Over the next week, Martha became an unexpected friend. She visited frequently, brought supplies, shared stories, asked difficult questions, and treated Elena like a person, not a victim, not a curiosity, just a person. It felt strange, wonderful, terrifying, because every connection created another thing she could lose, and loss had become familiar, too familiar. Meanwhile, Victor Crowe prepared. Far away in Copper Ridge, he sat inside a hotel room overlooking the main street. He was handsome in the way some dangerous men are handsome. Well-dressed, well-spoken, controlled. The kind of man people trusted before they understood they shouldn't. A frightened ranch hand stood before him, giving information. Crowe listened carefully, never interrupting, never raising his voice. That made him more frightening. When the ranch hand finished speaking, Crowe smiled. So Samuel Boone has decided to become a hero. The man swallowed nervously. Crowe rose from his chair, walked to the window, looked toward the distant prairie. I've always disliked heroes. His smile vanished. Eventually they start believing they matter. The room became very quiet. Crowe folded his hands behind his back. Prepare the men. The ranch hand nodded. How many? Crowe's expression remained calm. All of them. The next attack came with a storm. Dark clouds rolled across the prairie. Thunder echoed across the plains. Rain fell in sheets. Visibility dropped. Perfect conditions. Samuel knew it immediately. The moment the storm arrived, he felt uneasy. By sunset, the ranch had become a world of mud, wind, and darkness. Thomas checked weapons. The ranch hands secured horses. Everyone waited. The attack began shortly after midnight. A horse screamed. Then came gunfire. The storm swallowed the sound, making it impossible to determine direction. Samuel rushed outside. Rain hammered his face. Lightning flashed across the prairie. For an instant he saw riders. Then darkness returned. Another flash. Closer now. Too close. Gunfire erupted. Chaos followed. The storm transformed everything into confusion. Shapes, noise, movement, nothing clear, nothing certain. Samuel fired once, twice, then heard shouting near the barn. His heart dropped. Elena. Without thinking he ran, through rain, through mud, through darkness, toward the barn, toward danger, toward her. A bolt of lightning illuminated the world. For one brief second Samuel saw everything, an armed rider, a raised revolver. Elena trapped beside the barn wall, no escape, no time. Samuel moved, the gun fired, pain exploded through his shoulder. The force knocked him sideways, but the rider missed Elena, and that was all that mattered. The attacker never got a second shot. Elena's rifle answered first. The rider fell, hard, motionless. Then darkness returned. Rain continued falling, but Elena no longer heard it, because Samuel was on the ground and blood was spreading across his shirt. For a terrible moment she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move. Fear flooded through her, not fear for herself, fear for him. The realization struck with brutal force. She cared, far more than she had allowed herself to admit, far more than she intended, and suddenly the possibility of losing him felt unbearable. She dropped beside him. Samuel, his eyes opened, barely. You okay? Elena stared at him, actually stared. Rain poured from the sky, gunfire echoed in the distance, and somehow this fool was asking if she was okay. You've been shot. Samuel winced. That's usually how it works. Even injured, he was impossible. For the first time in months, despite terror and rain and blood and chaos, Elena laughed, a short, shocked laugh. Then tears mixed with the rain on her face, because she had almost lost him. And she finally understood something important, something impossible to ignore. Samuel Boone was no longer simply the man who rescued her. He had become something far more dangerous, someone she loved. And somewhere beyond the storm, Victor Crowe was preparing one final move, a move that would force both of them to choose exactly how much they were willing to sacrifice for each other. End of Part 3. If you enjoyed this chapter of US Wild Love Story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next episode. Coming in Part 4, Samuel fights for his life after being shot. Elena finally admits the truth about her feelings. Victor Crowe launches his biggest attack yet. A deadly showdown changes everything. The future of the Boone Ranch hangs in the balance. Covered a love worth fighting for. The storm finally passed before dawn, but the damage remained. Rainwater dripped from the barn roof. Mud covered the yard. Broken fence posts leaned at odd angles, and inside the ranch house, Samuel Boone lay unconscious. The bullet had passed through his shoulder. It could have been worse, much worse. But that fact brought Elena little comfort. She sat beside the bed through the remainder of the night. A lantern flickered softly nearby. Thomas paced the hallway. Martha Reed had arrived before sunrise after hearing reports of gunfire from neighboring ranches. Nobody spoke much. The silence felt heavy. At times, Elena found herself staring at Samuel's face, just to reassure herself he was still breathing. Every rise and fall of his chest mattered. Every breath, every movement, every second. Because for the first time in many years, she was terrified of losing someone. By mid-morning, Samuel finally opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Elena. The second thing he saw was Thomas. The third thing he saw was Martha. All three looked exhausted. Samuel frowned. "Why are all of you staring at me?" Thomas nearly laughed. Martha rolled her eyes. Elena looked away. And for the first time in days, the room felt slightly lighter. "How bad?" Samuel asked. "Bad enough," Thomas answered. "Not dead, though." "Not dead." Samuel nodded. "Good." Then he closed his eyes again. "That's reassuring." 3 days passed. Samuel slowly recovered. Not quickly, not comfortably, but steadily. Elena handled most of the treatment. The wound required cleaning twice daily. Bandages needed replacing. Fever needed monitoring. She approached each task with the same calm focus she brought to all healing work. Yet something had changed. Samuel noticed. Thomas noticed. Even Martha noticed. Elena stayed closer than before, watched more carefully, worried more openly. And though she tried to hide it, she wasn't particularly successful. On the 4th evening, Samuel sat on the porch for the first time since the shooting. The sunset painted the prairie in shades of gold and crimson. Elena joined him. For several minutes, neither spoke. The silence felt familiar now, comfortable. Then Samuel broke it. "You were scared." She looked at him. "Of course I was. You usually hide it better." The answer came before she could stop it. "I thought you were dying." The words hung between them. Neither moved, neither looked away. The wind whispered through the grass. Samuel's expression softened. Something warm and unguarded entered his eyes. Elena felt her heart tighten, because she knew, and he knew. And pretending otherwise had become impossible. The moment ended when a rider appeared. Fast, urgent, dust trailing behind him. Thomas spotted him first. By the time the horse reached the yard, everyone was standing. The rider nearly fell from the saddle. Copper Ridge, he struggled to catch his breath. Victor Crowe. Samuel's expression hardened instantly. "What about him?" The rider swallowed. "He's gathering men." A terrible silence followed. "How many?" Thomas asked. "At least 20. Nobody spoke. 20 men. Not 4, not 6. 20. Crowe wasn't planning another raid. He was planning a war. That night, the kitchen became a strategy room. Maps covered the table. Lantern light flickered across worried faces. Samuel, Thomas, Martha, several neighboring ranchers, and Elena. Everyone understood the truth. If Crowe attacked with 20 men, the ranch would not survive a direct assault. The numbers were simply too great. Eventually, Martha voiced what everyone was thinking. "So what do we do?" The room fell silent. Then Elena spoke. "We stop waiting." Every eye turned toward her. She stood slowly. "There is one thing Victor Crowe values more than money." Samuel watched her carefully. "What?" "Control." She pointed at the map. "If we force him to react, he makes mistakes." The room remained silent, listening, thinking. Hope began to take shape. For the first time in weeks, they weren't discussing survival. They were discussing victory. 2 days later, the plan began. Word spread quietly through neighboring towns. Not rumors. Facts. Real facts. Names, witnesses, evidence. Stories from survivors. Stories Crowe had spent years burying. By the end of the week, people were talking. By the second week, people were angry. And Victor Crowe hated many things. But he hated losing control most of all. The reaction came exactly as Elena predicted. Crowe abandoned caution, abandoned patience, abandoned strategy. He decided to end everything himself, which was exactly the mistake she hoped he would make. The final confrontation happened on a cold morning in late autumn. The sky was clear, the air sharp. The prairie stretched endlessly beneath pale sunlight. Samuel stood near the barn, rifle in hand, Thomas beside him. Neighbors lined the fences, men and women alike. Not because they wanted a fight, because they were tired of fear. Across the field, Victor Crowe finally appeared. 20 riders surrounded him, maybe more. For a moment, nobody moved. The distance between both groups felt enormous. Then Crowe rode forward, alone, confident, certain, the kind of certainty powerful men often mistake for invincibility. He stopped halfway. His gaze found Elena immediately. Even after all these months, even after all this distance, his smile returned, cold, cruel, certain. "Elena," she didn't answer. Crowe looked amused. "You've caused quite a bit of trouble." Still silence. Samuel stepped forward. Crowe's eyes shifted toward him. The smile faded. "So you're Samuel Boone?" Samuel nodded. "I am." Crowe studied him, then laughed softly. All this for one woman. Samuel's answer came instantly. Not for one woman. Crowe raised an eyebrow. Samuel's voice remained calm. For what's right. The words spread across the prairie. Simple, direct, true. Something shifted among the gathered people. A quiet certainty. The understanding that this fight was bigger than any single person. Crowe realized it too. And for the first time, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. Only briefly. But it appeared. Because he suddenly understood something. He wasn't facing one rancher anymore. He wasn't facing one escaped captive. He was facing an entire community that had finally decided enough was enough, and communities were harder to intimidate than individuals. Much harder. The standoff lasted several tense minutes. Then something unexpected happened. One of Crowe's riders removed his hat. Then another, then another. The men exchanged uneasy glances. Whispers spread. Doubt spread faster. Crowe noticed. His expression darkened. "Hold your positions." Nobody moved. Several riders looked away, others lowered their eyes. The stories had reached them too, the evidence, the witnesses, the truth. And suddenly, Victor Crowe no longer looked powerful. He looked exposed. The first rider turned his horse around, then another, then another. Within moments, nearly half of Crowe's men were leaving. Simply leaving, without a fight, without a word. Crowe stared in disbelief. His empire wasn't collapsing because of bullets. It was collapsing because people had stopped believing in him. For the first time all morning, Samuel smiled, a small smile, but a genuine one. Victor Crowe saw it and hated it. The rest ended quickly. Lawmen from 3 towns arrived before noon. Witnesses came forward, records surfaced. Victims spoke. And Victor Crowe finally discovered something he had spent years believing impossible. Consequences. By sunset he was gone, escorted away in chains. The same prairie that had witnessed so much fear watched him disappear into the distance, this time for good. The ranch felt different afterward, lighter somehow, as though a storm had finally passed. Not just the storm outside, the storm inside, the one carried by memory and fear. The one that had followed Elena for months, for years. Now it was over, or as close to over as life ever allowed. Several weeks later winter arrived. The first snow dusted the prairie. Samuel's shoulder had nearly healed. The cattle were healthy. The ranch was thriving, and peace had finally returned. One evening he found Elena standing beside the small creek behind the house. Snowflakes drifted through the air. The world looked quiet, beautiful, timeless. Samuel joined her. Neither spoke immediately. Eventually Elena smiled, a real smile, open, unguarded, rare. "You know," she said softly, "I almost left that first week." Samuel laughed. "I figured. You probably should have let me. I was never do that." "No." She looked at him. Warmth filled her eyes. "You weren't." The silence that followed felt different, full, certain, complete. Samuel took a slow breath, then spoke. "There's something I've been meaning to ask." Elena tilted her head. "What?" He looked directly at her. No hesitation, no uncertainty, only truth. "I love you." The words settled softly between them, like snow, like peace, like home. For a moment Elena simply stared at him, then tears filled her eyes. Not tears of grief, not tears of fear, tears of relief. Because after everything she had survived, after every loss, every mile, every nightmare, she had finally found something she thought she'd never have. Someone who stayed, someone who saw her, someone who chose her, every day, without condition, without hesitation, without fear. "I love you too," she whispered. And beneath a winter sky in the Colorado Territory, surrounded by the land that had tested them both, Samuel Boone and Elena Graybird finally stopped running from the future. Together, the ranch would grow, the seasons would change, years would pass, but some things would remain. The memory of a wounded woman hiding in a barn. The rancher who refused to abandon her, and the love they built one choice at a time. A love worth fighting for, a love worth staying for, a love that became home. The end. Thank you for listening to this story on US Wild Love Story. If you enjoyed this frontier romance, please like, share and subscribe to US Wild Love Story for more unforgettable tales of courage, love, redemption and life in the American West. And tell us in the comments, what was your favorite moment between Samuel and Elena? Until next time, keep the spirit of the Wild West alive.
Yeah, get down. Come on. Sky is bleeding, mud is deep, got nowhere left to run. Riders coming through the storm, flashing of a gun. Hear the thunder in the sky, the fire in the strikes the ground between us. You and me until the end. You and me until the end.
I know you're in there. Iron bitter on the morning air, frost on the timber of the barn. One more day of silent repair, got this weight across my arm. This ain't no poem in the snow, it's the price you pay to hold your ground. A debt the high horizons owed, till endurance is the only sound.
Easy now, don't you move a muscle.
You got two good horses and a whole lot of nerve. That blanket on your shoulders starting to bleed through.
Don't you talk to me about what I deserve.
Dust and desperation's all you left me here with.
Just drop the iron.
We can still call this an armistice. Ooh, cold light on the barn floor. The air is holding still now. Let me just look at you. The world outside can wait now. We'll stitch the quiet back. That blanket holds the night off. I'll bring the horses in. Sunlight on the pages now. The whole world can wait outside somehow. Let the golden hour stay and chase the shadows all away. Every turning of the page is a quiet healing stage. Your soft breath is all I hear while I'm holding you right here.
Mud is turning colder now. Your eyes reflect the fading light. All the noise just fell away. The world outside is standing still. We found our peace here in the rain. There's nothing left to break us now. Oohs and ahs.
You're weaving linen, thread and bone. Sunlight draws a golden line. The quiet after all the rain. Two steady hearts in borrowed time. Two steady hearts in borrowed time.